This week on the WriterCon podcast,
He said, Bob, the best advice I got, I'll give to you, which was, he said, follow your dreams and the money will come. Follow the money and you'll lose your dreams.
well, welcome everybody to WriterCon, a gathering place for writers to share their knowledge about writing and the writing world. Your hosts are William Bernhardt, best-selling novelist and author of the Red Sneaker books on writing, and Rene Gutteridge, best-selling author of over 30 novels and screenplays.
Thank you, Jesse Ulrich. And hello, writers. I am live at WriterCon with my co-host, Rene Gutteridge. And we're here to tell you what's going on, what you need to know, and what you can learn to enhance your writing career. And we're doing it from WriterCon, where over 200 people have gathered to celebrate the joy of writing and the writing life. We're recording this on the third day of the conference. Rene, how do you think it's going so far?
I think this has been amazing. I've heard people say this is the best one yet, and I have to agree.
Fantastic. I would agree also. Jesse, what's your favorite part of WriterCon?
Really, the ability to do this. That makes me happy.
For our interviews today, we have two of the top WriterCon speakers, New York Times bestselling author Robert Dugoni, whose new #1 bestseller is What She Found, the 9th Tracy Crosswhite novel, and also Yasmin Angoe, whose debut bestselling thriller, Her Name is Night, is setting the publishing world on fire. The sequel is due soon and can be pre-ordered now. And I'm looking forward to talking to them both. But first, the news. Quick stories and then one deep dive. First, the Association of American Publishers has released sales data. Now, just as a reminder, the AAP is composed of traditional writers, so Amazon and other online sellers are not included. So you're getting sales data from, excluding the sources of sales for more than half of the books in this country. So understand that you're primarily talking about traditional publishers and bookstore sales. But here's the data for the first half of 22 and the highlights. Overall, sales are down a little bit, but just 1.6% versus 2021. But remember, we had a huge sales surge during the COVID lockdown, so this is probably just a normal adjustment as the world slowly comes back to normal. Consumer sales in the adult print market have fallen more than 3%, but mass market paperbacks are seeing the highest decline, about 21%, which is pretty dramatic. We may be witnessing the end of what we call the mass market or smaller paperbacks that are giving way to trade paperbacks. Happier news, in children's and young adult, sales have increased by about 4%, and that seems to be due primarily to sales in the publishing, in the paperback markets. So, I think book world is doing very well, despite the fact that everybody's not trapped at home as they were for about 2 years. Okay, quickie number 2. Walmart has launched you guessed it, the Walmart Book Club. They're going to feature 5 titles annually, one for each season. I thought there were 4 seasons, but apparently there are 5 at Walmart, plus one pick of the year. The first title to be featured is Love on the Brain, a romance novel by Ali Hazelwood. It looks like Walmart is targeting more, books that sell for them, popular fiction and things that Walmart shoppers might like. This is, of course, on the heels of Oprah and Reese Witherspoon. A couple weeks ago on the podcast, we mentioned that TikTok was allying itself with Barnes & Noble to create a book club. That's changed since now. Now TikTok has decided to link up with Amazon to form the TikTok.
That makes more sense to
Club.
me. Like, I don't know how TikTok and Barnes and Noble will get connected, to be honest with you.
Well, the interesting thing is that so many TikTok influencers and book reviewers are totally dissing Amazon, but somehow this is going to work anyway. It doesn't seem to have dampened Amazon's enthusiasm for TikTok or the book club. So one more people, one more place, one more entity out there telling you what books to buy. All right, let's take the Jesse.
Well, quick question. I'm wondering if the people who came up with the Walmart Book Club are huge fans of N.K. Jemisin's The Fifth Season trilogy, which is maybe why they called it The Fifth Season. So I'm going to think that because that makes me feel better. So
Apparently so. Very good. All right, our deep dive also has to do with Amazon, the mystery that is Amazon,
There we go.
and particularly what's going on with them is Amazon. I mean, at this point, you may have forgotten that Amazon actually started as a bookseller, because today you hear the name used more in association with, space rockets or the new Lord of the Rings series or something like that. Not a fan? Is that what you're saying?
I'm excited for the new Lord of the Rings series. So
Okay. Oh, that was a good noise.
that was good noise.
Okay.
Yeah, it wasn't this one.
Well, they do
that-
sell books, just not as many as they used to. Orders are down at Amazon by a significant degree. Ordering books from traditional publishing is what we're talking about. And no one is exactly sure why, and Amazon isn't telling people. As usual, we can only speculate about what's happening. Jim Millia wrote a fascinating article, I thought, for Publishers Weekly, investigating this deep drop in orders and sales from Amazon since mid-July. They reported orders being down as much as 80% over the last 4 weeks for no apparent reason, and as I said, no explanation for Amazon. So what are the possibilities? Is it an overall cutback? We know that Amazon did have a poor first quarter and they got slammed on their stock. Maybe that we know it has slowed their plans to expand and build new warehouses. Are they cutting back on the book sector of their business? Or an even more ominous possibility that Amazon is moving more toward having book fulfillment by third-party vendors, as they do for many of their other products. If you buy, furniture or beauty products, or if you buy a lot of board games like I do, you can get them at Amazon, but they're always coming from third-party vendors. Is that the way the book world is going? I don't know. Rene, put on your Sherlock Holmes Deer Stalker and tell me, what do you think is going on here?
I think if you're talking about Amazon, it's safe to say there might be something ominous. Like you said, you can't understand the world. So I think the ominous possibility of the third party seller, that would be my guess.
Well, Amazon, of course, has its own publishing program, which many fine writers are a part of. And, they're not going to cut those orders.
Nope.
They're coming right from them. So that's another possibility.
That's a good possibility. And
it's safe to say that traditional publishing and Amazon, there's not much love lost there. We know right now that Penguin Random House is trying to acquire Simon & Schuster, the idea being to be big enough to compete with Amazon. And maybe this is blowback from Amazon saying, yeah, you can be as large as you want. It doesn't matter, but I don't know. The world is speculating, but bearing in mind that Amazon does sell more than 50% of the books sold across the board, all kinds in the United States. They're a significant player.
Didn't Amazon just announce they're closing a lot of warehouses throughout the United States?
Yeah, closing or not building. So that's part of the pullback. But maybe it's just overall. Maybe they're not meaning to target the book market, but we're just concerned because that's where we live.
it matters to us.
Yeah. Well, if we get more information on this, we will definitely report it on future podcasts. All right, Jesse, let's move to the interview. Please welcome back two friends of the podcast. They've both been here before, and now they're here live at WriterCon. And of course, I'm talking about one of the best-selling thriller writers in the world, New York Times best-selling author, Robert Dugoni, whose most recent book is What She Found, and of course, Yasmin Angoe, whose new book, Her Name is Night, is blowing away the sales records and best-selling. Your new book comes out when, Yasmin? In a couple weeks?
Yep, on the 13th.
And what's the title of that one?
They Come at Night.
Since you've both been on the podcast, you've all dealt with my traditional first question, so I'm just going to move past that. Yasmin, you've been here since Friday. You've had the whole WriterCon experience. How's it been so far?
Oh, it's been great. Everybody has been so nice and welcoming and enthusiastic. So it just like makes me feel great to be around here with everyone. And I've been learning a lot too, because I've been attending sessions. So it's amazing.
That's pretty great. If we can tell a best-selling author something she doesn't already know, I'm happy.
Yeah.
It's a good conference. Hey, tell everybody about Her Name is Night. What's going on in that book?
You mean like the synopsis?
Yeah,
Like
what's it about?
Oh, okay.
Who's the Knight?
Okay.
That's
so
Knight with a K,
with
I
a
should
K.
probably explain.
with a K. So it's about Nina Knight. Nina Knight is a female assassin. She's an assassin for a clandestine African organization who is out there to help the African people or the people of the African diaspora. So she is the tip of their spear and everything like that. And she goes out on a mission that they send her on. And she comes across one of the men who had 16 years ago totally decimated her Ghanaian village and killed her family before her eyes and sold her into trafficking. So she sees them. And so she needs to decide whether she is going to continue on with her mission or have her own mission of revenge.
Oh, fantastic. Take it from somebody who's already read this book. It is fantastic, and you will be spellbound. Robert Dugoni, you're delivering the keynote address today, and tomorrow you and Stephen James will be doing a Monday masterclass called Troubleshooting Your Novel. What's that about? What are you guys going to do?
Stephen and I have been together teaching for about, I think we just celebrated 10 years. We have a conference called the Novel Writing Intensive, and we take 12 students. We take the first 50 pages of their, and we review it, and then we teach at a conference. We have critiques and classes. So this is sort of a condensed version of the intensive, where we talk about things like plotting, story structure, character development, creating tension in your plots. Stephen does a lot on twists. We're going to talk about twists here at WriterCon, I think on one of the panels. So sort of it's wide ranging. We have different styles of teaching. I'm very nuts and bolts. I'm an attorney by background, and Stephen is a little bit more esoteric. So you get a little bit of both.
Sounds like
That
it's
sounds
perfect.
perfect, because there's writers both going both ways, right? Yeah.
We do, and we argue
Yeah.
frequently about things that I'll do in my novels that Stephen would never do, and things like that. So it's a lot of.
And you're an outliner, I'm guessing.
I am not an outlier.
No,
and
really.
I'm going to talk about that at the keynote. When my writing took off is when I had the courage to step away from my outline.
Oh, fascinating. Okay, can't
That
wait.
is interesting. What happened? Why do you think that? I mean, most people think that outlining is a good thing. So
Well, what I will say is this: if you are an outliner, then outline. If you are not an outliner, then don't force yourself, because if you're doing anything outside of your comfort zone, it's going to create anxiety. And I hear that all the time from people. And you create anxiety, and it gets in the way of your creativity and writing. For me, I had 5 best-selling books in the David Sloan series, but I felt that they lacked emotional appeal, emotional impact. And I had a time in my career where I had some time on my hands, and I read Stephen King's book on writing. And he talked about how does a writer sitting at his desk touch the heart and soul of a reader he's never met and never will, living in a town he's never visited and never will. And the answer, he said, was telepathy, which, sort of shocked me. And I thought to myself, well, that ain't going to happen. But then some other things happened. Some other writers I spoke with talked about similar experiences. And so I decided to take a step back, and I'll talk about it at WriterCon at the keynote. and to sort of put myself in a place to just have the story told to me rather than trying to force the story onto the reader. Let the story be told to me, and I become almost like a transcriber of a story that's being told.
I love that process. I'm also a pantser, so I've never been an outliner though. I've only started there, but I really love the process. And Bill and I talk about the difference often. And also I think it depends on if you're left brain, right brained, or somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, and pantser has this negative connotation to it. So now we call it organic writer.
Oh, I love that. Oh, yes. Who needs pants in there? Organic writer, absolutely.
Like that.
Because people pay more for organic food. So
Yeah, it's an organic book.
Yasmin, what about you? What are you outliner?
I am an organic writer. Right? That's the word. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Oh, that's
So,
awesome.
Robert, tell us about your new book, What She Found.
Well, What She Found is the 9th in the Tracy Crosswhite series. And I'm shocked that I've had the opportunity to write 9 Tracy Crosswhite
Pretty
books.
good.
I just finished the 10th, but the 9th book is Tracy returns to work at the Seattle Homicide Department, and she finds out that she's going to be handling cold cases. And the first cold case that comes in is a young woman who's a reporter. And she says, my mother disappeared 25 years ago. She was an investigative reporter for the Seattle Times, and no one has heard from her. My father has been a suspect for 25 years. I need someone to find out what happened to my mom. So Tracy pulls the file and she begins to look into it, and she finds a conspiracy much deeper than anyone would have ever imagined. What I like to do in every book that I write, and I've written, I think, 25 novels now, is I like to challenge myself. To keep it interesting, to keep it different. And this is a book that follows up on a short story that I wrote for Amazon Shorts called The Last Line. It can be read as a standalone, but it follows that time period. And then the book I just finished, the 10th book in the Tracy series, which has not yet been titled, that's going to follow on the heels of What She Found. So it's almost like a 3-book trilogy within the series. And it was a lot of fun to be able to do that and to bring characters back and to incorporate them into the story.
Now, the last time you were on the podcast, you had just published The World Played Chess, which was a standalone novel.
Right.
And now you're back to the series. Do you have a preference, or you like going back and forth, or what?
I love going back and forth. If you have the opportunity to do it, and not a lot of writers do. A lot of writers will write a very successful series, and the publisher will say, this is what we want from you. We want you to write the series. I remember one time at a Thriller Fest many years ago, Lee Child was talking about the Jack Reacher series, and we were out, and he said when he was finished, he was going to kill Jack Reacher because he didn't want anyone else to be writing any more Jack Reachers. I love writing standalones. I love writing literary. It's what I grew up reading. I became a writer because my mom was an English teacher, and I was not a very good student. I was in trouble all the time, and the teachers thought I was bored. And so my mother started handing me books to read, and she started handing me books like The Count of Monte Cristo and The Great Gatsby and The Old Man and the Sea. I had no idea what I was reading. I just knew I loved it. And so I always wanted to kind of get back to those roots. And I had that opportunity with The Extraordinary Life of Sam Hell, and then again with The World Played Chess.
Yeah. So what does a typical writing day look for both of you? Bob, I know that you're not outlining it. So does that mean you spending an hour staring out the window, or what happens?
No, that's me.
Yeah, is that right?
I do stare out the window. My wife put bird feeders out on one of the trees out my writing window. So it's very easy. The blue jays come at 10 o'clock every morning, same time. And I know because all the other birds take off, they're afraid of them. And the blue jays come and they'll feed. I'm very disciplined. I got that, I think, from practicing law and from a father that raised 10 kids.
Wow.
And worked his tail off to do it. So, I mean, I try to work out every single day, but I'm usually at my desk by 7, and I usually don't leave until about 3 or 4. And in that time period, I am either writing, I'm researching. I do a lot of research before every book. I think all of us do. I mean, I do a ton of research before I start writing, because a lot of your scenes come out of your research.
Yes.
You know, you're thinking about your book, and for me, my first draft is my outline. And so what I always tell my students is, you know, don't let your editor get in the way of your first draft. Let that be your outline. Put everything you want in there, and don't let anybody ever read that first draft. Because the minute you start thinking, oh my God, my mother's going to read this, or my wife's going to read this, you start to pull back, and then you're not writing raw and honest and unfiltered. So that first draft, just let it go, but don't let anybody read it, because then you can always go back and pull out those scenes that you don't want your mother to read.
Right.
So Yasmin, what is your day like after you stare out the window? And also, I want to know if you're a morning or afternoon writer. When's your freshest time?
Yeah, see, that's the problem, because I'm such an organic writer. I just write whenever like the inspiration hit me. I need to be more disciplined though, because you know I was telling some of the attendees at the sessions that it's very different writing before everyone expects you to deliver on something. So when I was writing the first one, like nobody, paid attention. My whole family didn't even know I was writing. And so I could just write whenever, and it felt great. And then when I was writing the second one, and then now with the third, with all these expectations and deadlines and all this other stuff, it became like really hard to juggle all that and to feel creative and, natural. And so I found myself staring out the window quite often. And I don't have blue jays in the front. Mine is, on the street. So we have, cars. And so I'll just be, oh, look, the neighbor has a new car today. Look at that. And so I'm like spending 30 minutes looking at their car, wondering how much they paid and all of that. And that's what I'm doing. But when I do finally start to write, I do try to write, a couple hours a day. I use Scrivener. So I kind of think about like the word count to get myself, done on time and things like that. And some days I just don't feel like writing and I want to watch Netflix or Game of Thrones. And so I'll do that. And, so I'm probably not the person to ask.
No, I think it's important, because I think there are two different types of people. And a lot of writers think I have to get up at 5 and do all that, or there's also writers who are a little looser about it. I think both are legitimate. Clearly you're doing something right because of your success.
Thank you for saying that. And I also still have, a couple kids still in the house.
Oh yeah.
I would love to do 7 o'clock, but at 7 o'clock, I'm yelling at my kids to get ready for school. And, we got to get there before the traffic and all this other stuff. And I'm doing that. And then, so it's a lot of taking care of them and getting them out of the house so that I can then kind of try to concentrate. So that's why it takes me some time.
That's inspiring to even hear a mom be able to have this kind of success and write. I think that will inspire a lot of moms, because I think it's a hard season.
Yeah.
Way to go on that.
Yeah. And I used to be an English teacher too. So I've dealt with you in the classroom. Very much so. That was a little triggering.
The way they used to deal with me in the classroom was get out.
Yasmin, what's the starting point of a book or a story or anything you're going to write? Does it start with an idea or a plot point or a character or what?
Well, so for the first one, it really started with the character. I knew I wanted to write, about this woman. I love the thriller genre, reading it, watching it and things like that. And at the time that I really thought of Nina, I didn't see, too many women in that kind of position who were doing those kinds of active things and getting, really into it. And I wanted her to have a job that was like really like questionable. And like people would be like, how do I like an assassin? Like they go and kill people on purpose. Right. You know what I mean? And so that is the thing that really, that was my next question. I want to write about this lady. She's going to do this thing. Now, how do I get the reader to kind of, vie for her instead of everything else? But then the subsequent books came out first, like with an idea, a concept that I wanted to kind of explore.
Mm-hmm. Bob, how about you? Where does the story start?
Boy, just about anywhere.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. I was thinking about writing the next book in the Tracy series, and I was looking for I keep a binder for every book that I write, and in that binder I'll keep all my research, and I'll keep notes, and I'll keep of interviews that I'm doing, and I'll keep some of my own notes and things like that. So I was looking for a particular binder which had some of my past characters in it that I would use. And I found a scrapbook in the attic, and the scrapbook turned out to be articles from 1930. My wife's grandfather was a very prominent lawyer in Seattle, and then I found a second scrapbook. So I took the scrapbooks, right? I mean,
Right.
what any writer would do, and I sat down and I started reading them. And it turns out that he defended a member of the underworld in 1933 in Seattle in a murder. And you're going to love this. The murder took place at the Pom Pom Club on Profanity Hill. Now, if that doesn't beg for a story,
You couldn't have written that better.
I don't know what does. And it turned out to just be this absolutely trial of the century in Seattle. And in doing the research, I learned a lot of really wonderful things, like why wasn't Al Capone or one of the Bonanno families of that time period, why weren't they in Seattle? And the answer people think is because, well, there wasn't any money in Seattle. It was sort of this backwater town. Well, that's not what it was. There was actually a lot of money because you had money coming down from Alaska. The answer was that the police department and the politician, the mayor's office, everybody was so corrupt, from the shoeshine boys to the mayor, that if you came into town, you'd get run out on a rail. So a quick example is Wyatt Earp came to Seattle at the turn of the century and started a gambling club called the Union Club, which was illegal. Wyatt Earp, right, opens up the Union Club. He was out of there within 6 months because he wasn't paying off the right people. And the other gambling joints went to the police and said, get him out of here. And they did. So it's the Depression. It's the end of Prohibition. You have all the illegal stuff still going on. You have the police on the take. You can't come up with a better scenario for a story. So I called up my agent and I said, I think I have a book here. And I told her about it, and she said, go for it.
Wow, that's great.
It is great.
How do you two, Bob, we'll start with you. How do you balance? I mean, you both are writing constantly, and you've got families and you've got other things to do, but you've got publishers wanting books. How do you balance all of that with the marketing that seems to be demanded in the writing world these days?
Not real well.
Well, I noticed you're at a writers' conference this weekend, so
Yeah. I'm not great on social media, and so I've really turned over a lot of my social media to the Amazon publishing, and they handle a lot of my promotional stuff, things for me. What I really learned is to do what I'm good at. And what I'm good at is I'm good at writing novels. And I'm not great at the marketing, the promotion. Some people are just fabulous at that stuff. I'm not. I have had movies that have been optioned, and I've been asked, do you want to write the screenplay? And my answer is no, because it's something I would have to take the time to learn. I would have to take the time to do it, and it would take time away from what I do well. And what I do well is I write novels. So people ask me all the time, how do you put out 2 and sometimes 3 novels a year? That's what I do. I write novels, and I have my novels that are out, promote my novels that are coming out. And I let all the other stuff be handled by people that are good at doing what they do well.
And by that, do you mean the publisher, or are you hiring author assistants?
No, the publisher does 95% of that for me now. And I work with them on, the posts that you see and you read are my posts, but I will answer a series of questions for them, and then they will use that to help get out in the marketing world. And then what I do on social media is I use social media for inane stuff that everybody loves, like
Right.
every once in a while, my cat will come and sit right on the computer staring at me. So I can't see the screen. Well, what that means is it's 6:00. I want to be fed. So I'll take a picture, and like 7,000 people will click on the cat. you know.
Yeah.
And I'll do those kind of things. So the social media stuff that I do tends to be just more fun.
Yeah, but that's what people love, right? You don't want to be
Exactly.
doing overt commercials all
No.
the time. That's
No, you're right.
Yasmin, how about you? How do you balance the two?
The same. I don't, but I'm not at Bob's level yet at the publisher, so they don't do that for me. So I have to kind of do it and get a publicist to kind of help me. And so we struggle, my publicist and I, because I don't like social media like that, and I just don't think of interesting things, to post, and I like to lurk and scroll on everyone else's things. So like when I go to these things and they're like, okay, you need to take pictures of yourself out there, and I might have taken maybe 2 pictures, and that was this morning because I remembered on the last day that I was supposed to take pictures. So it's a little bit of a struggle because they do say you have to market, and especially if you're a newer author and you've got to do all of these things, and I'm like, well, that doesn't feel natural to me. All I want to do is write. And so that's also one of the distracting things is I'm thinking about, oh, I'm supposed to be posting this thing or whatever. And so the publicist started making some posts for me. And that's really weird because then my phone will go off and I'm like, why is my phone going off? And I go and I look and apparently I've posted something and I'm like, when did I do that? And I'm like, that doesn't even sound like me. And, so and I have to pretend and engage that I actually wrote that thing, but I didn't. So
that's kind of a learned art or craft, perhaps, don't you think? I know when I first started on social media, I had no idea what to say, but in time, like Bob's, I've got a cat too, and I've got kids, and just posting about your life.
Apparently, I need to get a cat.
People, I think.
Telling you, people love cats. Bill, one of the things that was said to me when I was first talking to Amazon about moving my books over there, I asked them that question. I said, do you guys have a social media person? Do you have a marketing person? Do you have the blah, 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 blah? And the gentleman who was recruiting me, we were at a luncheon with literally about 10 people. And what he said to me is, we think the best marketing a writer can do is to write the next great novel. And we'll use your first novel to promote your second novel, and we'll use your first novel to promote your third novel. And that's really, I think, an honest answer for anybody out there that is starting this business is, you don't get to mail in a project ever, because that project is your best marketing tool. Somebody that will pick up your second book will pick it up because they liked your first book. And so you have to think of your book as not only your writing project, but you have to think of it as your marketing project. And you never want to mail in a story ever. And I've talked to writers who are coming up on deadline and they've asked me, what do I do? And I say, you get an extension. You do not turn in something you're not proud of.
We had Dean Koontz on the podcast a couple of weeks ago. He's also published at Thomas & Mercer, and he said almost the same thing. He said, this is the most supportive publisher I've ever had and the best sense of marketing I've ever seen in a publisher.
Yeah, I feel personally, like I've never been treated as well. Gracie Doyle, who's the head of Thomas & Mercer, is just a terrific editor, but also a terrific person. And, you can get caught up in New York City, and you can get caught up in the publishing world, and it can be very big and very impersonal and all those things. But when you find an agent like Meg Ruley at the Jane Rotten Agency, who's just a really good person, and when you find an editor that's a great editor, but also a good person, you hold on to those people.
Yes.
You really hold on to those people.
Absolutely. Well, since we're at a writers' conference and we're live, why don't we end with what's your most encouraging words to aspiring writers? What would you want to tell them today to help them through their journey?
So I would say to just keep trying like one more thing, even when you feel like everything is like against you and you can't finish this book, or that you're getting, if you're trying to go the traditional route, you're getting a lot of rejections and things like that. I would just keep saying to just try one more thing, because that's what I had to tell myself before I finally got my agent and things like that, because I was about to quit, literally. And it was me just trying one more thing, which was, applying for a contest that I eventually won. That was the thing that kept me in. So it's just just keep on trying, no matter what.
That's a great story. That's awesome.
I would say two things. The first thing was something that was said to me years ago by a gentleman that was left IBM to become a portrait photographer, and he's probably the premier portrait photographer in the world today. His name is Michael Colopy. You can look him up. He's taken every portrait of every famous person in the world. And what Mike said to me when I asked him about, I'm changing careers, I'm going to leave the law, I'm nervous, I'm scared to do this, is he said, Bob, the best advice I got, I'll give to you, which was, he said, follow your dreams and the money will come. Follow the money and you'll lose your dreams. And I really took that to heart, and I really feel that it's the truth. But the other thing I would say to all the writers out there is I think apropos to what you're doing this weekend, which is learn the craft. Learn the craft. There is a craft to writing a novel, and I didn't know it. I was a writer for the LA Times. I thought, well, I'll just sit down and write a novel. How freaking hard can it be? It's very hard.
Very.
So learn the craft before you sit down, and it will save you hours of time. Stephen James's books are fabulous books on the craft. Donald Moss writes great stuff. Christopher Vogler, The Writer's Journey. Learn it. And you will never regret learning the craft when you sit down to write a novel.
And I just have to say that every name you've just mentioned is either at WriterCon this year or has been in the last 3 years. So what can I say? Come to WriterCon, everybody. Yasmin, Bob, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
And if you're listening to this and thinking, gosh, I wish I'd gone to WriterCon this year, I have some suggestions. First, on our website, you can still register for post-conference viewing, meaning that you can watch video recordings of the sessions online. And in second, you know what I'm going to say, sign up for next year. As soon as the 2023 WriterCon is available for registration, once we've updated the website and all that, I will certainly mention it on the podcast, and you can take advantage of the early bird price. In the meantime, please join the WriterCon Facebook group, and you can get daily updates and find out what's going on all the time, all right? All right, then. Writers, keep writing. And until next time, remember, you cannot fail if you refuse to quit, all right? See you next time. Thanks.